As we all know, the most expensive power is the power that we don't have access to, especially when it affects production and it causes downtime. So renewable energy therefore got huge potential to play an important role in providing reliable energy to many industries, and mining, of course, being one of them. And for me, I think the connection between renewables and mining is really interesting. One is very new, innovative, tech-driven, and the other one is perceived to be old and traditional and old school. And one of the biggest challenges when speaking about the two is that there is opinion, whether it's true or not, that renewables for mining companies are difficult to finance. And in our session before lunch, we had a couple of suggestions and solutions on this. But the purpose of this panel is to find out how mines and renewables experts can tap into development and community infrastructure funding for financing renewables for mines. So next to me here, I have 3 leading development banks, and I would like to kick off this session with each one of you introducing yourself, your bank, and then the key criteria or key investment criteria of your bank.
Good afternoon, everyone. Thank you very much, Energy and Mines, for the opportunity to be on your panel this afternoon. Thanks, Gabriela, for the coordination, and thank you very much, Adrian, for hosting. My name is Tsitsi Musasike, and I am a Business Development Manager at the Development Bank of Southern Africa. The DBSA's mandate is driven by social imperatives, as we are 100% owned by the South African government. Whilst we are a DFI, we are used as an instrument to advance the government's social objectives, but we also have a mandate to be commercially sustainable. Our focus is infrastructure funding in 6 key sectors: energy, transport, ICT, water and sanitation, education, and health. We provide funding to public-private partnerships, to the private sector, to municipalities, and to state-owned entities. Prior to December 2013, our mandate was restricted to the SADC region. Post-December 2013, our mandate was extended to the rest of the continent, but obviously Africa, with its 54 countries, is an elephant. So outside of the SADC region, we have 6 focus countries, namely Ghana, Nigeria, Uganda, Kenya, Ethiopia, and the Republic of Congo.
Thanks a lot, Gabriela. So I'm Jan de Wolf from IFC, a Senior Investment Officer. I will not introduce myself anymore because I think I did already in the presentation. I'll just take the opportunity to indicate a little bit more why we're engaging in this. It's actually the starting point, as I indicated before, was really that we believe that mining companies are anchor investors in emerging markets, and especially in sub-Saharan Africa. And we really see them as the key developers of the infrastructure sector in the region. And what we really think is that high energy prices are a struggle for mining companies, and are a struggle for them to ensure long-term competitiveness of these mines. So that's really crucial. The use of HFO or diesel has a really huge impact on the overall climate in the region. And last but not least, mining companies are also one of the biggest employers in the region. So these 3 elements together make it that we, as IFC and the World Bank and as a whole, we really are convinced that we really have to support these initiatives, and we really want to do everything we can to make it happen.
Well, thank you. Thanks a lot for the invitation. I'm Zubair Suleiman. I'm the Senior Investment Manager for DEG, the DEG part of the larger KfW group. I'm based in Southern Africa, and I am heading the energy business for DEG for Southern Africa. For those who don't know DEG, we're part of the larger KfW group, and we are, if Jan has already introduced IFC, so I won't repeat it. We are almost identical to the IFC. We only do private sector investments in emerging markets. And with regards to this conference specifically, we've already seen the renewable energy program in South Africa progressing. It's already, it's on its own 2 feet. The DFI has helped it a lot in its first phase. I think that's where we DFIs play the best role. And now, within South Africa and outside of South Africa, we're seeing massive, massive requirements and need for off-grid energy. And energy, well, we've seen a lot of projects and a lot of mines requesting this, and non-mining projects as well requesting these solutions. And I think now we're in a position to start focusing and finding solutions for this new, let's say, new wave of renewable energy program.
Okay, thank you. And so how does your institution see its role in financing renewables for mines in developing countries across Africa? Sisi?
Well, traditionally, mines are intensive users of energy. As DBSA, we're very keen to support renewable energy projects that add to the power supply and reduce reliance on the national grid. We would see our role as typically as providing funding solutions, be it long-term debt, long-term senior debt, or mezzanine funding. We also provide what we call empowerment finance. For the South African Renewable Program, we have funded our BEE and local communities to assist them in taking equity stakes in the project companies. We also provide project preparation funding. The DBSA was actually instrumental in paying the fees for the advisors that drew up the framework for procurement of IPPs in South Africa. We also see our role as being a DFI, developing community programs related to these projects. Thank you.
So I think from our end, we're not that different from DBSA and KFWE or DGA as such. I think I see a couple of angles. You have the typical financing, so the debt financing, that's the plain vanilla. But there as well, we have some special products, especially for this market, where we see that giving the difficulties to get across the longer offtake agreements, it is difficult sometimes to get to the tipping point. And then the cost of financing is going to be crucial to be able to get there. So one of the tools we can use is to bring in concessional funding. So it's actually financing which is at a lower to very low rate to actually to be able to get a project done. And so the whole idea behind this is to actually create business that without that cheaper finance wouldn't be possible. So I think that's the first one. Second one is the product I explained during my presentation. So actually not only providing funding during the development phase, but actually also engage as IFC with the expertise we have within the mining sector, within the renewables energy sector, and bringing our expertise during the development to actually guide mining companies to make the right choice and to ensure that the projects actually get off the ground. And then, as well, participating in equity to further de-risk the projects.
Well, first of all, DEG is, and within the KFW group, we are one of the largest funders of renewable energy projects globally. So it's a key focus area for ourselves and our group. More importantly, we can prove, well, we have evidence of this great support for renewable energy programs. We are one of the top maybe 5 largest equity investors in the renewable energy program in South Africa. We also one of decent debt providers as well. So that's something we pretty much like and we would like to support. Whereas looking at projects outside of South Africa, it becomes a bit more difficult. The difficulty comes in the off-taker, and how to bank the off-taker. Usually in countries outside, well, mining projects as such, we do find difficulties in securing an off-taker that's bankable. And I think that's one of the stumbling blocks we've been having in recent times with recent projects. Country is not an issue, and I think that's why we want to just put it aside, because we're not having country as an off-taker. We, as a DFI, we've been investing in Africa since the 70s, so we take country risk on our books, so we understand country risk. But however, and that's where things get bundled up. We don't have issues with country, but we have issues with the off-taker. And finding a bankable solution for that is where we currently stuck at this moment. Because, and one of the reasons is, even though we like renewable energy, we're having difficulties with mining projects as such because of the commodity risk. And that's something we need to take into account, because the commodity price, in essence, will underscore the mine itself, and the mine balance sheet income statement will be our off-taker. So it's more than just a renewable energy project when it comes to mine specific, or any other industrial project, to be honest. But we have the intention to finance that. IFC has started a very good program with that, to try and educate and see which is the best solution. And I'm hoping we find a good solution, because that is a very good development, let's say, story. But also, it takes the burden off the governments as well, and the state utilities, and makes it much more even playing field for everyone. At this moment, it's just too erratic.
Okay, thank you. And you already touched on this briefly, but how does your development bank analyze country risk when assessing infrastructure investments?
I can only agree with DEG. As such, country risk is part of our DNA. That's what we do. That's why we're there. And we go to countries where a commercial bank wouldn't go, and so that's really something we're able to take. And as such, it's even it's a strange statement, but having an offtake agreement with an operational mine, from a risk point of view, is potentially lower than having an offtake agreement with a virtual bankrupt public offtaker. So for us, from a risk point of view, having an operational mine with proven reserve life, that's probably going to be a less risky approach. I think, and then you have all the, let's say, the other elements which go along, like expropriation and things like that. That's typical what we're facing in any other financing in the region as well, in these markets. I think there exists a lot of product to protect equity holders, like MEGA insurance and things like that. So on that one, I think we're quite fine.
Just to add on to what Yannis said, we do look at the mitigants. We look at political and commercial risk insurance for the countries outside of South Africa. But we try and minimize to the extent possible because of the cost impact on the project. We do work very closely with the ECIC, which is the South African ECA. We also work very closely with the Department of International Relations and Cooperation. And then in addition to that, we would also make sure that we are able to ring fence the project cash flows, because that goes to the core of our security. Within the bank itself, we do look at externally generated ratings models, but we have our own in-house rating model, which looks at each project from an African perspective in order to avoid overpricing.
And I know in the beginning you mentioned that your focus is on 6 countries, but which countries and project types are most attractive for you?
So the 6 countries, obviously, but within those 6 countries, we are pursuing projects, mostly on the energy side. We have done, in the SADC region, outside of South Africa, we've done a transport or road transport project in Zimbabwe. I know that for most people, Zimbabwe is a high-risk country, but we have done a project there, believe it or not. So in Ghana, for instance, we are looking at an energy project with Sen Power. It's a 300 megawatt project. In Zambia, we're doing a mine project with the Mamba Core Power Project, 300 megawatt project. We also looked at Kafue Gorge, Kafue North Gorge project in Zambia, where we mobilized the mines as off-takers on the project. Some years back, we had a capital injection or equity injection into the Central Energy Corporation in Zambia.
And for you?
I think, as such, as I see, again, I think the whole of sub-Saharan Africa is our market, so no difference at all. I think specifically for renewables to mines, I think we see a couple of clusters. I think you have the, let's call it the Sahel cluster, where quite a bit of gold mines are in Mali, Burkina, even Guinea, Senegal. So there you really see a clear cluster with remote mines with fairly decent reserve lives, and so there we really believe that there's going to be quite some activity in the next couple of months or years. Then you see a country like Ghana, which is traditional, with a very strong mining industry, but facing huge issues with load sheddings and price increases. So there we see as well a lot of activity, a lot of thinking, and a lot of focus. A bit a similar story in Tanzania. And then, of course, traditional countries which are very ill-served on energy is like the DRC. It's a very tough market, very tough country, but huge opportunities, both from solar as from hydro, with a lot of demand from mines. So I think this is going to take a little bit more longer because it's a very, very challenging market just to do any business. But it's gonna come for sure. And then lowering down, I think, of course, the whole South African market and all the countries around. You know, we had a lot of discussions already yesterday and today. I think there's a huge market. The only thing we as IFC, we just want to compete with commercial banks. I think if commercial banks are able and willing to step in, we're more than happy for them to go. But if we need to play in the beginning again a bit the bridge builder to ensure that really banks and mines understand what we really want from each other, we're happy to do so.
Well, only thing I can say is everything that he said, that's all. Nah, I think only thing I can add, I mean, everything he's covered most of it as well. From our side, I can add just a couple of countries which you missed. And that would be the likes of Namibia, Zambia as well. We're seeing a lot of projects coming through from there. Angola as well. We're seeing a lot of requests coming from there, specifically on the mining side, but on the renewable energy side as well, off-grid as well. We're looking at in those countries. So demand is growing. Just, well, basically any country that has a mine that's very remote will require some sort of energy solution. At this moment in time, what we're seeing a lot is HFOs, hybrids. Hybrid is perhaps the stepping stone to full renewable energy. And there's quite a few projects we're looking at this moment in time. But the ultimate objective is to get it completely off-grid and green. So a renewable energy solution with storage is ultimately the way to go. And I think we're not there yet, to be honest, or not there yet in the form that we can roll it out across the entire continent. You might get a few, 1, 2 here and there, but completely get everybody comfortable with it. It's going to take a bit of a while, but I mean, I think we're on the road towards it, and that is for us. Let's say for certain for banks, in essence, you want the traditional countries to be, you know, the leaders, the easier countries to bank. The certain countries in West Africa, East Africa, Southern Africa, North Africa as well. There's quite a few requests coming through. So at this moment in time, there's no specific country that we can't go and do. Perhaps South Sudan, but even that, there's a possibility. But apart from that, I would like to keep the doors open for this. Zimbabwe is a bit of an issue, and, specifically on the mining side. So that unfortunately, if you have a project there, and honestly, I'm not talking, Monday I got a project in Zimbabwe like that, with a mine offtake. Unfortunately, that's too political at this moment in time, but hopefully one day it will be doable.
Okay, thank you very much. So now let's play with the thought that I'm either a renewables executive or a mining executive. And so what would be a good starting point for me if I want to investigate funding options?
I was speaking to Sam earlier on, and I said to him, funding is really not an issue. The challenge is to get bankable projects, well-prepared projects on the continent. So for us, a good starting point would be a presentation of a pre-feasibility study or a concept study that you've done on the project to the DBSA in order for us to assess and provide an indication of appetite in that sector or for that project. And then should we have appetite for the project, then to progress the project to bankable feasibility, and then to explore the procurement options for the project.
I think from my end, I couldn't agree more. The only thing I would add on that one is to also see in the consortium, or let's say from the sponsor side, to really see expertise. So they need to have experienced partners, because otherwise, it is complex to set the right structure in place. So if there's no experience around the table, it's not going to fly.
From our point of view, it's exactly what was mentioned. And my question now is, it goes back to your question, is it from the point of, or is it the renewable energy developer approaching me or the mine approaching me? Because there's two different methodologies there.
Yeah, and I think if you can answer both would be great.
Yeah.
Yeah.
if the mine is approaching me, that's sort of simple. Then it just breaks down into two things. Is it on balance sheet or off balance sheet? And the easiest way to finance it, undeniably, is on balance sheet. So then we take the entire mine risk. That's one solution. Off balance sheet is another solution, which we're willing to explore, but there has to be some sort of link towards the mine itself or the shareholders. So that's two options. The second one is, the second person approaching me would be the renewable, let's say the developer. Now they come to me, and which is generally the case. They would come to us and they would say, okay, I've got this mine, give me a random country, Zambia. I've got this mine in Zambia, copper belt, very nice. Unfortunately, the electricity supply is erratic, and they're looking for a solution. They already have diesel generators. Again, that's very important, because renewable energy currently is peak, is not base. So and also miners and CEOs of mines like to hear sound making energy. When you hear no sound, they find it problematic. So I mean, well, the mine is changing. Everything is changing. I mean, they're learning that you don't have to have noise to make electricity. But nevertheless, let's say they do have diesel generators, which is currently in most cases, but they want another solution. They want a complementary solution. So the approach is developer, and the developer comes to us and say, okay, I've got this project, and what can we do? It's on a boot basis. So within X amount of years, it will be transferred. So that's also something we can do. So it's sort of off balance sheet, but that's where the trick comes. We have to do a full analysis on the mine, because they are the off-taker. So we do need full information of the project. And if let's say it's a normal PV project, it's probably the most, I don't know if there's any developers here, but it's a brain-dead solution at this moment, which is really good, because it's very simple. We don't have any issues. As long as we're okay with the EPC contractor, it is a proven and tested solution. Now we've got to see the mine. So if you do come approaching me, I do need information on the panels and the EPC contractor and the structure you're envisaging, but I do need more information on the mine itself. I do need the balance sheet. I do need to know. It's probably, some of it is confidential, but that's how we have to find comfort in the off-taker. And you know, as Jan mentioned, in most countries outside of South Africa and Namibia, a mine is a better off-taker than an incumbent utility or the government. So we do like it. We call it a corporate risk rather than a government risk. But we do need to, if you approach us, we need information on the mine. And very often the mine is reluctant, but unfortunately we need to get comfort that off-taker is good for that off-taker.
Okay, great. And Jan, you before gave us an example of a solar power plant in Chile. And Cici, you went through a couple of examples around Africa. But can you please give another example of where your institution has taken a lead role in financing energy infrastructure projects for mines or for other large industrial users? Do you have any comments?
Okay. At this moment in time, a captive project in Africa has not been banked, if not mistaken, by us. I still await information on some projects in West Africa, if it's banked already or not, but nevertheless, I'll talk about Southern Africa. And no, we haven't banked any mining-related project. However, we do have a few on our books in a pipeline stage. When it comes to other types of, let's say, outside of mining, yes, we have done quite a lot. We're doing a lot in West Africa, North Africa, across the spectrum, from PV, CSP, we're looking at CSP, to wind. And that would be typical countries, which is South Africa, Namibia, Mozambique, Zambia, Ghana, Nigeria, Kenya, Uganda, Rwanda, Morocco, Egypt. These are probably the live projects we have currently at this moment in time. We do have a lot of requests from DRC and from Zambia as well.
IFC?
Difficult to think where to start, actually. You know, we have really engagements in mining companies all over the continent, same in energy projects all on the continent. And I think we really typically, we tend and want to take the lead and sector reforms in most of the countries we're active. I think the last example I can give you is like, for example, in Nigeria, where we're currently closing the first IPP in the country, despite the incredible need of energy, despite the abundance of gas. It has taken the whole lending community really ages to get there, but we're quite proud that we're getting there finally. And that's just an example of we understand the complexity of the continent, of the stakeholders, and that's our job to try to find a solution.
For the DBSA, it's really not about us leading a project. It's about us being able to unlock these infrastructure projects on the continent. I did allude earlier on to the role that the DBSA has played in terms of the South African IPP programs. And our wish is that this program be rolled out to the other African countries in order for us to unlock infrastructure development. But also our role as a DFI in the region is to unlock regional projects that impact several countries as opposed to a single country. Yes, that's our wish for the continent.
All right. Well, I asked my questions, so I would like to turn to the audience and see if you have any questions to our panelists. I see someone in the middle there, so we are going to get a microphone.
Point. What is the key aspects of a PPA agreement that you'd be looking for on a successful project?
I think there are a couple. There's not one key one, but if I have to mention one, it's really alignment between your offtake agreement and your financing term. So it's very basic, but if you want to finance your installation on for example, 10 years, and you only have an 8-year offtake agreement, it won't fly. So that's really an obvious one. And then apart from that, I think, as I mentioned before, it really has to be a very clear, plain vanilla take or pay. Especially in the mining industry, and I've seen quite a bit of them already. You know, there's always a tendency to have some kind of escapes for reasons and whatever. Really, you know, in all circumstances, I can completely understand the reasoning behind. But if you want to do non-recourse project financing, it's take or pay, and there's really no option to have any variance on that one. So that's a very important one. I guess another one is just to make sure that, you know, you have a very strong off-taker, and it's not just, you know, an in-between company that's been created to mitigate a little bit the off-take risk with the mining company, and to ensure that they don't have the full liabilities. You know, it's really keep it as simple as possible. You know, everybody knows exactly what we ask, but for the one or the other reason, people try to get around it and find fancy structures. You know, you can try, but in the end, it will take a lot of time, a lot of costs, and you will end with the same result.
Just to add on to that, appropriate risk transfer, I think you touched on that, Jan. And most importantly, from a lender's perspective, our rights to step in. That is very important.
I think I'll just repeat what Jan said and try and put it into everybody's head. This is not an easy, it's sort of a novice industry now for us. So therefore, anything that's a bit exotic and sexy and cute will not fly. And our committees will not accept that. So you have to keep it as simple as possible, get the legal counsel and drill into them to keep it simple, drill into the mining company. We have to keep it simple. Nothing specific. Obviously, the structuring, as Jan mentioned, is crucial. I mean, goes without saying. The off-taker has to be strong and doesn't. I mean, it's exactly what you mentioned, and not an SPV or a shell company or a Mauritius-based entity. You know, it kind of becomes a bit tricky for certain DFIs. But only thing, for this question, only thing I would like you to take is keep it simple. Engage the DFIs early on. If you have a really solid project, engage us early on, and tell us, okay, this is the terms and conditions. I had a project in one of the Southern African countries, and the PPA did miss a few major clauses that we needed, and the mining company were not too happy with it. But you know, that's it. You keep it as simple. Keep it. When I mean simple, I mean keep it. You know, as normal as possible. Not to be. Not to fall into the prey of the mining company and say, okay, you know what, I want it to be pegged to the commodity price or something like that. You know, that won't work for us.
Sorry, Shane Quinnell from Eon. I suppose my question is around, we've heard a lot about the requirement for the strength of the off-taker in the agreements, and the question comes in terms of, we've heard from Diamond Corp this morning that they potentially would be interested in having an agreement worked in from a developer and engaging with solar or whatever. But being a small mining company, what are the options for that? Would they be considered a strong enough off-taker, or what can they do to match that?
I think everything depends on the quality of the mine itself. I think all of us around the table, we all also not only have experience in infrastructure, we also have experience in mining. And so we are able to assess the actual asset. So that means when assessing the asset, it is what is the quality of the minerals, what is the volume, and so the reserve life, and not only the reserve life which is publicly announced, but you know, the potential extension of reserve life, which based on certain parameters can always be extended. and then also the operational cost. And I think all of these will ultimately lead to a certain credit rating of the specific mine. So if you have a mine which has very high quality of minerals, but also very high costs, so then it might be that for us it's, we don't feel comfortable if the price of the commodity is dropping and your mine is not longer competitive versus other mines, and that will ultimately drive your overall bankability. So for us, we're more than happy to make an in-depth analysis of the mine itself and the asset, and that will drive our credit decision.
Cece, I see that you're nodding, but do you have anything that you would like to add?
I agree with everything that Jan just said. Nothing to add. Thanks.
No debate here.
Again, if I simplify this, the question, you will see Diamond Corp had the same in their presentation. Their immediate objective is to be cash flow positive. So obviously we look at that. That's also one of the, we're in the cycle is a junior miner. But if you want to take something out of this, the simplest way is that we will look at the mine. We will forget about the renewable energy or the generation. We will focus on the mine and see if the mine is somebody or some entity that we can provide financing to. That's all we will do. Everything else will fall into place if we're comfortable with that. So we'll look at the mine, and as Jan mentioned, all of the details of what is important. But and then we will, and only then we will look at the energy generation aspect of it. And that's how we would look at, let's say, Junam, well, just about any of these projects.
Yeah, there we have a question.
Hi, Ian Curry. Just a quick comment on PPAs. Power Africa recently published a book called Understanding Power Purchase Agreements. It's written by a whole lot of American lawyers. That might be good or bad, I'm not sure. But it's a really, really good book, and it's available for electronic download for free off the Power Africa website. So if you're looking to understand PPAs and get an understanding of risk allocation, which is really what a PPA is all about, it's a really great reference document for people who are not lawyers, which is probably a good thing. The question I wanted to ask, though, particularly seeing as we have development banks sitting in front of us here, is the challenge that newer technologies, so maybe the technologies that are sexy and look cute and everything like that, have to go from potentially being absolute game changers in the energy provision space and getting the commercial track record that commercial banks would lend. There doesn't seem to be any organizations or institutions that fall into... Do you guys cut me off? There doesn't seem to be any institution that falls into that gap that's prepared to take a slightly different perspective on risk to get innovative new technologies funded. And in my opinion, that should be one of the roles that development agencies fulfill. I mean, you call it development banks. And I'm hearing a couple of mms and nods and that in the crowd, because it really is a fundamental challenge, particularly in the yeah, but this isn't venture capital, you know. This is sort of post the venture capital. This is post all the pilot testing and everything like that. This is, you know, putting in that first commercial plant, because you're caught in that catch-22. You know, if you've got a commercial track record, of course we'll finance you. If you don't have a commercial track record, no, we'll never finance you. Well, how do I get a commercial track record? Yeah, it's the golden question. I don't know if you guys would care to comment on that.
Do we care to comment? Is that the question?
I insist.
No, okay. First of all, on the Powering Africa book, yeah, I do recommend that. It's a very good starting point. You can be, I would suggest that and it's free. So even if it wasn't free, I would suggest you get it. Now, when it comes to the tough questions now, Development banks. I just want to separate two. Well, this is a fundamental differentiation. And please, I've been trying to put it into some people recently as well, so I can just repeat myself. So that's quite easy. There's a difference, there's a stark difference between a development bank and a development finance institution. That's very important to understand. We are development, DBSA is sort of a hybrid as well, but we are development finance institution that are sitting here. That's different to a development bank which does concessionary type of funding, government to government funding, development funding. I know IFC has something along similar lines where they have concessionary type of funding and assistance, but we are a development, a DFI, that's what we call it. And DFI finances, and the reason why we've been financing in emerging markets only successfully is because we assess risk. And I know this is a bit hard, I'm going to be a bit serious now. We assess risk differently. And we try and again, it's global risk amongst many jurisdictions, so we have that expertise. Now, when it comes to assessing, let's say, new technology, we have to see if it falls within our expertise and falls within the risk category that we are willing to take. We are DFI, we step in, we do not crowd out commercial banks, but we do have a market-related due diligence, market-related, when I mean market, I mean almost investment bank, commercial bank type of due diligence, and credit committees. So when it comes to new technologies, it's very, very difficult to get a new technology immediately into our committee and get it approved. I'm not saying that we don't like it. It just takes a bit of, let's say, smoothing and a bit of, lobbying, etc. The way we lobby is getting the experts. I'll give you the best example of all. CSP in South Africa. CSP is probably, will answer your question. CSP was a no-go 2 years ago for just about all DFIs, even DEG for that matter. KfW IPEX Bank, which is a commercial bank, we also said no. We weren't too comfortable with certain aspects of, let's say, molten salt CSP. Okay, I'm being a bit technical, but it's a very brand new technology. Brilliant, but new at the time. So we said no. We just needed more information on it. We are not going to take risk that we're not comfortable with, because that's what a DFI stamp means. We have approved that project or that technology. Now, CSP has taken a while, but it's already coming to stream. We're financing it. The DFIs are financing it. Commercial banks are comfortable now with it. We had our in-house expert to go to the US and see those towers there and see, wait a minute, it actually works now. We need that comfort. It's very hard for a DFI to, I'm speaking to myself about myself, not about the others, but it's very hard for DFI to finance a new technology off the bat. It takes some time. We need some track record because we are putting everything at risk. We're not taking political risk insurance. We're not taking any other type of risk insurance. We're going to fund directly at the project level. So it's very frustrating, I do understand. And there's a couple of very, very exciting technologies out there, but it takes a bit of time and a bit of track record.
I'm going to let the others get off the hook with that question and just wrap it up. Thank you very much, guys.